And then in September of 2010, I was pulling out of the parking lot at UVU. The sun was right in my face, and I didn't see a car. And I thought there was no traffic there, and I pulled out and I hit a car. Just kind of bumped it, hit the passenger side, and I like panicked. I freaked out and I took off. Yeah. So I drive off and I get away. I think to myself, I'm like, why did you just do that? What is your deal? What are you running from? There's nothing illegal. You're not drunk. You're not high. There's no drugs or guns in the car. I have insurance. I'm registered. I'm doing nothing wrong. And I ran away from an accident. And I'm like, okay, well, you need to go back. And then I think, no, if you go back, they're already going to know who you are, and they're just going to grab you and throw you in jail, and you're not going to get to say anything about it. So I'm like, okay, well, what do I do? So I called the cops and was like, so this has just happened. What should I do? And there was already a Mapleton police officer at my mom's, because I was still living with my parents at that time. Called him and talked to him, and he was like, kind of, he ripped into me a little bit, and I'm just like, well, hold on a second, you kind of know my past, right? And he was like, well, yeah. And I'm like, I panicked, I freaked out. Just tell me what I need to do to fix it. And he said, well, here's the officer's number at the wreck, call him. So I called him, and he chewed into me, what in the hell is your problem? Rah, rah, rah. And I'm like, whoa, I just want to fix this. I don't want to fight with you. I don't want to cause any problems, just whatever I got to do. And he was like, oh, okay. And he said, just go to where the other officer's at and wait for me to get there. And so I went there, and he came, and I talked to the Mapleton officer for a while. He had worked at the prison before, and he said, he said, what have you always, I was really upset with myself because I had just finished up my therapy and thought I was good. And he said, what's the first thing you used to do if the cops were coming? I said, ran. And he goes, and so it's kind of a habit. He goes, it's something you've trained yourself to do. If the police are coming, I run. And so that's a reaction that you need to fix. He said, because we talked a little bit about the therapy that I had just done. I'm like, man, I've worked through all these things. What am I going to do if I see these people, all these different triggers, the places, because I was back in the same area, and a lot of things bring back all sorts of memories. And so, we had talked about all that and worked through them and different contingencies and thought of things. And he goes, you never thought of what you would do if you just got in an accident and weren't doing anything wrong. And so he said there's going to be consequences, and they're just going to have to deal with them. And he said sometimes when people run into problems like this, after they've been through a lot of trouble like you, he said they just kind of throw in the towel and they just go off the deep end. He said, don't go off the deep end, just deal with it. And I remember I went to court and I asked the public defender, and I was like, okay, this is the circumstances. This is, what's going on with me. Is there any way you can keep me out of jail? Because I'm going to school, I'm trying to do good things. This was kind of an accident. I mean, yeah, I screwed up big time. I shouldn't have done this. But is there something you can do to work with me? And he told me, no. He goes, you're going to jail. And I was like, I need to find a different lawyer. So I went and hired a lawyer, and she said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get straight A's, and I don't want you to get any more. She goes, if you get any more trouble, you're done. And she goes, if you get C's, you're done. So she goes, get straight A's. She goes, I'll see if I can get this pushed out till January, until the semester's over. And she goes, if I show up and I talk to the prosecutor and you have a transcript with straight A's on it, and you've done only good things, and you get a bunch of good letters from your landlord and professor and your boss and whoever else, she goes, and go back to your therapist and work on this and get a letter from her too. And so I did all that, and the prosecutor, he looked at my straight A's, and he said, he didn't even tell the judge about my criminal history. He just said, Your Honor, I want a $750 fine and a year of probation. And so And then he told my lawyer, he said, tell him that if I see him in here for anything, a speeding ticket, he's going to jail for a year. He said, and I'll talk to his federal probation officer and try and get him thrown back in federal prison. And I said, fair enough. And so worked out everything. 6 months later, I got off that probation early. And then a month after that, I got off my federal probation. And so it all worked out good.
Wow, you had a streak of luck there.
Yeah.
You had a police officer, an attorney, and you were smart to get a real attorney. And then you had the prosecutor. I mean, how many people get that much good advice?
That's part of why, because I've never been really in my life very much of a religious person until the last couple of years. Since I've gotten out of prison, everything has just fallen into place. You know, yeah, the wreck was a bad deal, but it couldn't have worked out better. And it kind of brought my attention to something I still needed to work on. And you know, it also shows that, you know, change isn't easy. Change is pretty tough. And sometimes there's bumps in the road. Sometimes there are relapses. My therapist called that a behavioral relapse. In the big scheme of things, I think it was actually helpful and helped me to probably avoid some problems later. My interaction with police before that had always been very negative. And so to have a negative circumstance and have kind of a positive interaction was really interesting. And
he turned into a counselor for you.
Yeah, he did.
And then the prosecutor. How often do you see a prosecutor who actually wants you to succeed?
Yeah. He was really good. He cut me a huge break. And even my probation officer, he was kind of like, well, you're doing good with everything else, so let me know what happens with the court. And he was really good for me.